Okay, we're here with Mr. Dyer, who's going to be giving a presentation later on tonight. And what will your presentation be about?
Oh, I haven't decided yet, but I'm working on it. Okay, yes. What it's really about is the fact that places like Rocky Harbour and the west coast of Newfoundland and all the places in the world that used to be kind of peripheral, outside of things, away from the center, only a limited number of things you could do there. You want to do everything else, you have to go to the big city, are no longer peripheral because there's no center anymore.
Is this an issue you feel strongly about?
Well, look, I mean, the point is, look, if you grew up in Newfoundland, when I grew up in Newfoundland in the early 19th century, or whenever, if you wanted to do anything other than, fish or go into the woods or be a lawyer, you had to leave, right? I mean, there was, maybe 20 jobs in journalism and you could be a doctor. But for most of the rest of the jobs in the world, you had to leave because they weren't done here. They did those in the big cities, in the center. It's not true anymore. If I want to set up a software company, I can do it right here. The whole business of center and edge, center and periphery, which meant that places like Newfoundland weren't where it really happened.
Do you think this is better now that Newfoundland is more connected, or do you think...
Everywhere is more connected, and we can be too. Everywhere is as far from the center as everywhere else because there is no center.
Is this a bad thing, or...?
This is a good thing. This means that we can do whatever we're capable of doing, whatever comes into our pretty heads to do, right here. We don't have to leave. There is no requirement that we be on the outside and somebody else be on the inside. That's what's happened in the world. That's what's changed. Really, it's changed because of communications. I mean, it's changed because, you start with long-distance telephones and you go to the internet in, 40 years? And what it means is that it doesn't cost any more to do anything you want to do here, except maybe make something very heavy and move it, than it costs to do it in New York. In fact, it probably costs less.
Do you think this harms the culture of the places where they were so much isolated before that their culture develops in a certain way, and now they're losing that aspect of their way of life? Like now.
Yeah, you're onto something there. That's true. There's always a downside. There's always a price to be paid. Part of being isolated, part of being, frankly, marginal, nobody else comes here and we don't leave because we're too poor, is that you have this sort of isolated setting in which you can develop your own culture. Well, you don't do it in the sense that you're consciously doing it, but it does develop. And it's distinctive and it's yours. And just because you've all been here and nobody else has been, it's different from everybody else. And that's valuable. People love it. That is the price you pay now for no longer being on the outside, no longer being on the periphery. You're no longer so special either.
But do you think there's a lot of stereotyping? Like if you say Silicon Valley, I'm going to think of computers. You say Newfoundland, people all think of fishermen. They don't think of the man who runs a software company. They think fishermen. Like a lot of negative stereotyping. Do you think?
Well,
no.
The point is if Newfoundlanders don't think that, it doesn't matter what the rest of the world thinks, because eventually if you produce something they want, they'll buy it.
But would they buy it from someone from Newfoundland? They might think, well, they fish there.
Well, the point is that the only people who have that prejudice about Newfoundland are the people who know where Newfoundland is, which is basically people in eastern Canada. In Sri Lanka, they don't have any preconceptions about Newfoundland, There, it's in North America. They want to sell us some stuff, it works, it's cheap, we'll buy it. You sort of jump over the local prejudices and you're in the world. And but you're right, what you said about the downside, look, you are already less distinctively a Newfoundlander than your grandmother was, almost certainly. And I'm less distinctively a Newfoundlander than my grandfather was. He was a sea captain, died at sea, lost his ship, silly bugger. But, I'm not like that. I live in London and I don't even sound much like a Newfoundlander because I've lived there so long. But that's okay. I have an interesting life. You'll have an interesting life, I hope. You won't cease to be a Newfoundlander, but yes, it won't be as distinctive. But on the other hand, it will be a much wider and probably more interesting life than your grandmother had. You always pay for change, but I think these changes that connect us to the world, that move us from the periphery into the center, because everybody's in the center, or nobody is, if you know what I mean now. These changes are basically good. They mean that we have all the opportunities everybody else does, and we didn't used to.
In like the third world countries, they're still going to be outside the center because they don't have the communications. Like, this costs a lot of money, or...
It doesn't cost a lot of money. That's the beauty of it. It doesn't cost a lot of money. All you need is the education, the investment. I mean, to plug into, for example, and this is a trite example, but it's an easy one, and everybody knows it. To plug into the internet and have access to everything in the world that you get, you need a local phone connection and $1,000, which anybody can come up with. You know, I mean, really, if they're serious about it. You know, you buy a second-hand computer, it'll be slow, you'll sit there tapping your pencil while it downloads, but for $1,000 and a phone line, you have the world. It isn't expensive, and this is true for kids anywhere on the planet, not just here. It does mean there's a lot of competition, because the same thing that's true for Newfoundland, we're connected to the center, is also true for villages in southern India. So they're your competitors, or your potential partners, and they're your customers and your suppliers. It's a different world. But it's a world with a lot more opportunities. I mean, really, when I left high school in St. John's, I left St. John's, I left Newfoundland. Half the high school graduating class left and never came back, or didn't come back for 20 years, because there was nothing to do here if you grew up in town. If you grew up in an outport, at least you probably then could go fishing. You can't do that much anymore. In town, you know, if the jobs weren't there, the opportunities weren't there. They used to go to Boston, then they went to Montreal, then they went to Toronto, I went to London. Because there, you know, if you wanted to do anything other than about 10 stated jobs, they didn't do them here. Now you can do anything here.
Do you think this will affect the economies of some countries where, so far, like Newfoundland, all they do is fish? But well, not all they do, but if they start selling software now, do you think this will have a positive impact on the economy?
Of course it will. It is having already. Look, the proportion of the Newfoundland economy that comes out of the fishery dropped below half 20 years ago. It's probably way below 20% now. I mean, the proportion of the population that is engaged in it or is hoping it could get back into it is a lot higher. But in terms of where does our income come from, less than a fifth of Newfoundland's income comes from the fishery. And less than half of it comes from fisheries, forests, and mines. You know, we do other things, and you can do them here, which again, you couldn't do in the past. You don't have to leave to do interesting things, and if there's nothing interesting to do, you can invent your own thing, and if other people are interested in it, they can access it even if you stay here. It's a different game.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.